Greetings, friends, on this occasion of the celebration of Martin Luther King Day. Just injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The context of this saying was written from a prison cell in the city of Birmingham, Alabama. The larger context is this. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow provincial outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. In the book of beginnings that we call Genesis, the first statement made about the value of human life is Genesis 1:26. God there declared that all humanity, male and female, is the image of God. Of all that God had made in the vast universe of creation, only humanity is so much like God that God could call us God's own image. The next most profound statement is on the interrelatedness of human life, which is a counter narrative that comes in the context of the first murder. Cain, through jealousy, has killed his brother Abel. The value statement is declared in a social ethic as God asks Cain a simple question: where is your brother? Cain answers the question with a question: am I my brother's keeper? The answer was yes. If we can come forward to 1963, it was a year of profound highs and lows for the civil rights movement. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference had decided to partner with the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights in order that they might create within the city of Birmingham a Birmingham campaign whose goal was to engage in direct action to dismantle the city's system of segregation. It was a hard-fought battle against injustice and against Jim Crow legislation, and it would result in King's incarceration, in the mass incarceration of many hundreds of protesters, and in the hospitalization of the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. Ultimately, the movement would bring the city of Birmingham to the table of negotiation, winning a battle that would dismantle the injustice of Jim Crow and open the opportunity for qualitative change in relation to civil rights and employment. King had endured incarceration, and in those 7-some days of incarceration wrote this powerful letter from the Birmingham jail. King had been arrested on Good Friday. But in just a few months, August would roll around of the same year, and over 250,000 people would descend on the city of Washington, D.C., and an event called the Great March on Washington. These peaceful protesters had come not to wreak havoc and destruction on the nation's capital, or to attempt to overturn the results of a fair election, but to speak the truth to power and to demand equal citizenship rights and equal access to gainful employment for all of America's citizens of color. Language may have been different, but the essence was the same. All lives do not matter until Black lives matter. It was not, however, a once and for all victory. There would be backlash. Backlash that would manifest itself in the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, killing 4 little Black girls that looked like our little girl that just read the poem. This tragic event, orchestrated by evil cowards, would bring Dr. King back to Birmingham to eulogize 3 out of the 4 victims: Addie Mae Collins, Carol Denise McNair, Cynthia Diane Wesley, and Carol Robertson. The great truth that made it impossible for Dr. King to be uninvolved was the idea that life is interrelated, interdependent, and interconnected. It was this awesome determination to be involved for the good in things that matter that characterized his entire life. My friends, it is that same quality that should characterize our lives as well. God has called us all to be active participants for the good on the stage of God's unfolding story, and not passive spectators. 5 years later, again on Good Friday of Holy Week, April the 4th, 1968, an assassin's bullet would silence one of God's greatest prophets. Yes, they killed the messenger, but the message is still with us, inspiring us to continue to challenge injustice in all its forms. Whenever we don't challenge injustice, whenever we don't challenge it everywhere, we allow a foundation to be created that has the potential to treat us in an unjust manner. Whenever we fail to challenge injustice everywhere, we open the door for injustice to go anywhere. And if you haven't seen it yet, rest assured that it can come to a cinema near you. This fundamental idea of the interrelatedness of life was not rocket science. It is a lesson that was not only at the center of Dr. King's life, but in simple lessons that he taught that are visible to us every morning. He said, "Did you ever stop to think that you can't leave for your job in the morning without being dependent on most of the world? You get up in the morning and go to the bathroom and reach for the sponge, and that's handed to you by a Pacific Islander. You reach for a bar of soap, and that's given to you at the hands of a Frenchman. And then you go into the kitchen to drink your coffee for the morning, and it's poured into your cup by a South American. And maybe you want tea. That's poured into your cup by a Chinese. Or maybe you desire to have cocoa for breakfast, and that's poured into your cup by a West African. Then you reach over for your toast, and that's given you at the hands of an English-speaking farmer, not to mention the baker. Before you're finished eating breakfast in the morning, you've depended on more than half the world. This is the way our universe is structured. It is its interrelated quality. We aren't going to have peace on earth until we recognize this basic fact of the interrelated structure of all reality. And an appreciation for a president that determined that he would not be part of the solution, that he would be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. Let me hasten to a close with a quote from Lyndon Baines Johnson. But even if we pass this bill, the battle will not be over. What happened in Selma is part of a far larger movement which reaches into every section and state of America. It is the effort of American Negroes to secure for themselves the full blessings of American life. Their cause must be our cause too, because it's not just Negroes, but really it's all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice. And we shall overcome. I started this reflection with the Genesis story and a divine question that was posed to Cain. And because life is interrelated, interdependent, and interconnected, the answer to Cain's response, am I my brother or sister's keeper? The answer is still yes. And all of God's people said, Amen.